Thank you very much for Ruba for hosting this and the Arab Organization for Human Rights for organizing such important events. Since some of the issues I was planning to touch on have kind of been covered in quite an articulate way as well, I want to talk. The topic of today is impunity and why Israel is constantly getting away with murder, literally with murder, and with no accountability whatsoever. And I agree with pretty much everything that Mark, a good friend and an excellent journalist in his own right, has said. But I wonder sometimes that is this really about knowing or not knowing what is happening in Palestine? What is going on in Palestine? It's been going on for 75 years and more. In fact, commissions sent by various countries, from Britain, from from the United States, from the League of Nations, even prior to the establishment of the United Nations, among others, have all concluded that something horrific was happening in Palestine prior to the establishment of Israel. This was free and available knowledge to everybody. It's not like it was this well-kept secret. And now we are beginning to understand and realize that Israel has been committing war crimes in Palestine. So there is no element of newness to any of this. Palestine was admitted into the ICC 2009 because of the so-called Cast-Lid operation. How many people were killed in Cast-Lid? 2,370 something, right? And over 10,000 were wounded. And yet there was another war, 2012, a major war, 2014, another war, 2021, and of course there was 2019, and now again a few days ago, and so many mini wars in between, in addition to the fact that according to the United Nations itself, the year 2022 has been the most violent since the UN has been keeping counts of particular type of casualties in the West Bank, which is 2005, after the end of the Second Palestinian Intifada. So between 2005 to 2022, last year was the most violent, again, by the admission of the United Nations in the kind of reports that are made available to all UN members, whether in the Security Council or in the General Assembly. Everybody knows what is happening in Palestine. Maybe ordinary people have been hoodwinked for such a long time because of, we know, the power of Zionist media and all of that, but that is changing, and it's changing rapidly, which is good news for Palestinians. And that is helping us create kind of a counter infrastructure based on civil society organizations, mosques, churches, synagogues, and all sorts of organizations that are operating outside of governmental and political institutions. But in my mind, it's really not the lack of knowledge that is prohibiting Palestinians from receiving, finally, that international support that they deserve. I don't know if you guys watched Mahmoud Abbas's speech before the security, or rather the United Nations, on the Nakba Day 3 days ago. It really was quite a jumble of words, and that really a speech should have never been given, considering the fact that this is the first time in the history of the organization that Nakba Day is commemorated by an international institution to this level, which is a great in terms of the power of that event, and how it's once more reasserting itself on the consciousness of the world. And this is the credits go, of course, to the Palestinian people, to the resistance, but also to the massive global solidarity that has been at work every single day for so many years. But the rest of the world, they know. Governments understand what is happening in Palestine. And some of us who have been working on this for literally decades, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I did report from the United Nations, and I did report from the Security Council, and I've interviewed various ambassadors of various countries from the global south to the global north. There is knowledge. It's just the lack of the political will because of the hegemony that the Americans have over the decisions of the United Nations. I know that in a few days there's going to be massive debate at the UN regarding the need to reform it. And I know that China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and other countries, mostly the BRICS nations, but other nations as well, including Arab nations, are pushing for reform, reformatting the structure of the UN so it reflects in a more democratic way the will of the international community. And I think until that happens, the United States will continue not only to control the political directions and the political nature of or will of the United Nations, but rather all the other institutions that are affiliated with it. And here's an example. We all remember when Ariel Sharon was being, there was the possibility of trying him in Belgium over war crimes committed during the Sabra and Shatila massacre and the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. And of course, there were legal basis for that because some of the victims, the survivors rather, of Sabra and Shatila were Belgian citizens, and because Belgium allows its citizens to file for war crimes against, if these were crimes committed against them anywhere in the world, Ariel Sharon naturally was the first to face that possibility. And we know all what happened when the United States began exerting pressure on Belgium, threats at times, kind of carrot and stick sort of thing, as if Belgium is just a client regime for Washington. And not only did they actually manage to force Belgium to drop the case, they forced Belgium to restructure its entire legal apparatus so that this does not happen again. The same thing happens with the Palestinians, even though Washington is not a member of the ICC. Washington has taken upon itself to advocate for Israel to prevent the ICC from trying Israeli war criminals before the International Criminal Court. How did they do that if they are not members of the ICC? They did it through what they call friends of the courts. I think there are about 8 of them, or I can't remember the exact number, but I know that Germany and Australia were some of these countries that advocated for Israel to drop the case, constantly finding ways. Palestine is not a full member of the UN. Palestine is not, eligible for this sort of trial because of this and that. So another, pretense. Well, because also Israel is capable of trying its own citizens, and Israel is a democratic state, and all of this. This is Germany. Germany, World War II, Holocaust, Nazi past, is instead of finding it morally compelling to actually say never again against anybody, actually stood against Palestinians and continues to fight at the ICC tooth and nail to prevent the Palestinians from advancing the case. And even though technically there is a case that is open, we doubt that anything is going to happen anytime soon. And I'm not being a pessimist. We are in touch with the lawyers who are advocating for Palestine at the ICC, and they told us that the budget for the ICC trials just came out, and the budget for this year and next year allocated to Palestine and the investigation of Israeli war crimes in Palestine is the lowest, which indicates, kind of wink, wink, they are not really planning to advance the case. But wait a minute, why advancing cases against the likes of Vladimir Putin, right, and issuing an arrest warrant for crimes supposedly committed on February 22nd? So within a year time, within a single year, There were deliberations, cases, files, lawyers, and the pre-trial chamber issuing an arrest warrant. Well, in the case of Palestine, 75 years, hundreds of massacres, a continuous military occupation, a continuous system of apartheid, violations of every possible war crimes related law at the UN, crimes against the humanity, even the crimes of genocide, of course, the crime of apartheid, crimes of aggression, crimes against peace, and the whole lot. Yet we haven't even seen a trial that is moving in the right direction. And we are watching these crimes happening before our own eyes on TV 24/7. So, so the issue here in my mind, and I will try to cut it short because I think I've reached my 10 minutes. The issue in my mind is really not the lack of knowledge, is the lack of the political will because of the current legal infrastructure that is either controlled directly by the United States through the United Nations, through the use of veto power at the Security Council, or indirectly through the ICC and other organizations in which the US is not a member. So if we are to fight this, we have to keep that understanding in mind, that things will not magically happen. They will happen through a strategic process that is led by Palestinians and their friends. We need to go after countries like Germany and Australia. We need to hold them accountable. They cannot get away with obstructing justice to this extent when thousands of Palestinians continue to die as a result of Israeli war crimes in Gaza and in the rest